Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Student Cluster Competitions introductory webinar. My name is Lamai Weekly. I'm the Student Cluster Competition Chair for SC25, and I'm joined by Layla Freeborn, the SC25 IndySCC Chair, and some of you might be familiar with her as the SC24 IndySCC Chair as well. So today on the agenda, we'll be going over what the student cluster competitions are, the student cluster competition SCC and the IndySCC. We'll tell you a little bit about them and what you can expect from them. We'll talk about what's new this year for both the IndySCC and the student cluster competition, how you can prepare for the team application and for the competitions, and we'll do some Q&A at the end as well. We're recording this session and we will be posting this recording on the SCC and IndySCC pages. And we hope that you'll keep your eyes on that space as we'll be posting other webinars and posting a webinar schedule there and more of the most up-to-date information. Here. So, moving around. So who is in the SCC? Just like to say hi from the SCC committee members. There's a lot of people who make up the committees and who volunteer their time to take part. So here's a listing of myself, the SCC chair, and I'm joined by the SCC vice chair, Abhinav Toda, who is on this call. Layla Freeborn, the IndySCC chair, and Dan Dietz, the IndySCC vice chair, along with a lot of other people who make these things happen, not just our committee members, but a lot of volunteers who are in the Students at SC program, as well as student volunteers and the committee at large who help make the student cluster competitions happen each year. So what are the student cluster competitions? As many of you know, and you're obviously curious about this competition and about HPC in general, if not already training to be an HPC professional, HPC is one of the best tools in existence for science and engineering. And as part of this, as part of supercomputing, the conference series, of course, we want to foster workforce development and ensuring that the future cohorts and the future professionals that enter HPC are well trained, are curious about what's going on in our profession, and can network along with many of the professionals that we see come through the conference and learn from them. So the student cluster competitions foster these skills in development and social connections, and hopefully bring you people like you into HPC with the hope that we'll be seeing you and you'll be our colleagues in the very near future. So what is the SCC, or the Student Cluster Competition? It is a 48-hour nonstop contest to build and run a small supercomputer. So teams of 6 undergraduate students, and again, these student team members must be 18 years or over and be enrolled in a university or high school at that time, and still undergrads, design and build in HPC clusters, working with their vendor partners and institutions to find the hardware, bring the cluster and build it at the conference, measure and tune its performance through a suite of benchmarking exercises, and then run real science workloads on your cluster, running applications that the committee will select and tasks that we'll give you. And then also handle real-world events like power outages. In the past, there were scheduled power outages or surprise power outages as part of the competition, but there are also real-world events that might lead to power outages that we simply can't predict or are simply out of our hands. For example, in the past, there were host cities that were going to do power outages that could impact the competition, or there might be adverse weather effects. So you want to keep in mind, how can I keep my cluster that I'm going to bring to the competition more resilient, and think about that architecture and infrastructure. And then at the end, when you run all your benchmarks and you run your scientific applications, you're going to report on the results, and then we're going to score them. There's also going to be a few mandatory events that make sure that you're connected with a conference and make sure that you're getting the most out of your conference. of course, as an there has to be an equalizing factor throughout all of the teams and the clusters you build. So we will, as part of the rules, we make sure we enforce that all of your clusters fit within a power budget that is indicated in the rules, and that we'll touch on later in the presentation. So I'll hand this off to my colleague Layla to talk about how the IndySCC is different from the SCC. Layla, take it away.
Awesome. And yeah, Lamai and I are going to be going back and forth on some of these slides here. So how is the IndySCC different from the SCC? So it shares a lot of the same goals, but I think there are some important differences that make it an especially good fit for teams who are maybe new or inexperienced to cluster competitions. So it is cloud-based. It's held simultaneously with the student competition that happens the Monday through Wednesday of supercomputing. This year, teams will be provided allocations on Jetstream 2, which is an NSF-funded cloud resource hosted at Indiana University. We're going to have practice running the applications built into the schedule. And so, well, with the SEC, teams are definitely encouraged and expected to practice prior to the competition. It's more of a scheduled, guided education experience with the IndySCC. Teams can apply to compete on site, but really the majority of teams will compete virtually, and the competition is built so that it can be done 100% virtual. There is no reproducibility challenge, and the benchmarks are run prior to the competition rather than the Monday of SC. And then finally, there are no team interviews. Logistically, with there being on-site teams and virtual teams, it would just be a little too messy. And so we do not do team interviews for the IndySCC. We'll go to the next slide. You're muted.
Apologies. So what can you expect for the week of the SCC the week of supercomputing for the student cluster competition? So I'll go over the schedule for the SCC, and then Layla will follow on with what you can expect for the IndySCC. So the SEC schedule during the week of the conference, teams will arrive on Friday or Saturday. That largely depends on whether or not you're going to be an international team. Typically, international teams arrive on Friday to give more time for that travel process and to acclimate to the host city. And then on Saturday, we begin with the orientation and safety briefings. So on Saturday afternoon, once all the teams have arrived, we'll start with the safety briefings where we'll talk about security, for example, around the conference convention center, and as well as electricity and all of the other stuff that have to do with the convention center proper, making sure that you all are safe. And then following that, there will be the students at SC orientation, which is for the whole students at SC programming. If there's time in between, guys can rest and we can take a look at the booth, but it might very well be the case that we'll go from the safety briefing right to the students at SC orientation, or maybe the other way around. It depends on the schedule, and we'll know that closer to the conference. And then finally, on Saturday evening, you'll attend the students at SC Mixer. So you'll have a chance to network and talk, get to meet the other students in the student program, whether they be student volunteers or lead student volunteers, all the students that make the students at SC programming go. And in there, you'll have a chance to have some food and beverages, get to meet other people, and do some social events as well, to start to kick off the events of SC. After the briefings, building begins, and building will begin through Saturday into Sunday. And then come Monday morning, we start the benchmarking. So benchmarking will go throughout all of Monday until the evening before the gala opens and starts. Once benchmarking is over, your final cluster configuration is locked in and there are no more hardware changes. But at that point, you'll get to enjoy some dinner before the official opening of the conference. And when that starts, we will actually start the beginning of the competition. We'll have some VIP guests, typically the general chair of the conference, drop into the booth and get the competition started. We will announce the mystery app and the data sets for the competition, and we'll just start things there, and we'll get things going for the next 48 hours. So for the next 48 hours, from Monday evening into Wednesday evening, you'll be running your applications, interacting with conference goers, and attending some other mandatory events. And then finally, at the end of the evening on Wednesday, you'll submit all your task results and everything else that the competition is asking you to turn in for scoring. And at that point, you'll all be very happy because you will give the committee some pain as we try to score all your tasks and everything else so that we can turn in the results to the awards committee so that we can announce the winner at the results ceremony in the early afternoon on Thursday. Following the awards ceremony and that we've announced the winners, we'll go back to the booth and we'll start tear down. But then following that, there will be a feedback session where you'll be able to give some feedback and comments to the committee, and we can hear your input and make sure that we keep building on the program and have even better cluster competitions in the future. And with that, we'll move on to the IndySCC schedule. Yeah.
Thanks, Lamont. All right, so the IndySCC starts several months prior to the final 48-hour competition. So in August, we will have an orientation webinar where all of the IndySCC teams will hopefully attend and get some important information about what it's going to look like over the next few months. Around this time, the teams will also get access to the Jetstream 2 hardware. In September to roughly mid-October, we're going to do the application webinars and exercises. And so this is when the teams will have an opportunity to get hands-on experience with the applications. Between mid-October and November, there'll be a benchmark webinar and something akin to hero runs, where teams have an opportunity to run the benchmark application over a larger pool of resources. And then finally, November 17th to 19th is the final 48-hour competition. And so for the second year in a row, this takes place at the same time as the SCC. And so it follows a pretty similar schedule from there on out, in that on Monday evening, the mystery app and the data sets are announced. The main contest actually starts after the opening gala. Between Monday and Wednesday, all the teams will run their applications, get to interact with the conference, and participate in other events. Wednesday evening, the competition ends. And then,
sorry about that, Layla.
Oh, good. And then Thursday, brand new for this year, results will be announced at the award ceremony. And so I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to differences or what's new for this year. And I think you can advance on.
Okay. We have a couple of slides here about what the SCC is like and what the IndySCC is like. Here I've embedded a video from Steve Leake's interview with a few past participants last year, but in the interest of time, I encourage you guys to take a look at it and see what they talk about their experiences were like in the student cluster competition. And I'll move forward and hand it off to Layla. Oh, Layla, are you going to have a...
Not a video, no.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing. Okay, I guess we'll talk about the SCC components first. So what can you expect then in the actual competition? We've talked about what the schedule will be like during the conference week. What are the components of the actual competition once you've started building your cluster and your benchmarking, and what are the things that you will be running, and what will you be scored on? As I mentioned earlier, on Monday, once your clusters are built, you'll be running benchmarks. And the goal here is to get the highest score in the selected benchmark suite of HPL, HPL mixed precision, and ML-Perf. There will be no mystery benchmark or benchmark interviews this year, and we'll make sure that we get those published on the website shortly after we have this webinar. You'll run those all of Monday, and then again on Monday evening before the gala starts, you will lock in your hardware. That will be, you will not be able to make any more changes to your configuration. Once the competition starts on Monday evening, you'll be running applications and complete tasks and report results and performance for those applications. There will be 2 named applications, and I was really hoping that we could announce them at the webinar, but we are have to finalize another one. We've had somebody drop out for the second app, so we will need to. We are getting pretty close to finalizing them, but we will be announcing them soon. And in addition to those 2 named applications, we'll have the reproducibility challenge, in which you will be asked to reproduce the results of an SC24 paper and write your findings in a journal quality report. This is in partnership with the Reproducibility Initiative, and the selection of this paper is again coming pretty close. So we hope to announce the applications and the reproducibility challenge fairly soon. We will be posting them on the website, so watch that space. They will get posted there. We'll also have webinars from the application experts as part of our webinar series, and they'll talk about the applications, and you can ask them questions during those webinars. We'll make sure that those are posted on the website as well. In addition to the named applications and the reproducibility challenge, there will be the mystery application. This will be announced at the beginning of the competition on Monday evening, and will also be part of the applications you'll need to run in the 48 hours. You'll also have your team poster that will contain information about your team and why you're going to succeed. But as with former years, or in the last year, we will not be doing the poster talks. And you guys will just have those posters posted around the booth, and we'll have a set of reviewers who will score them. Another part of the SCC components will be some mandatory events that we hope you will attend to, have some networking, get to know some people around the conference. We talked about the student mixers, but one of the other ones we'll have is the guided interest group, which will be a mandatory event. We'll have students from the guided interest group come down and visit the booth and ask you all questions, and this will most probably take place on Tuesday. We're finalizing that with the gig folks. And then again, for any announcements for the applications, reproducibility challenge, and the benchmarks, please take a look at our website for the most up-to-date information. So Leila, what's the IndySCC like?
All right. So this was my slide that contrasted with the video that Lamai directed you all to. So the IndySCC is primarily virtual. And so there's lots of interacting with hopefully your own team, but with application experts and members of the committee over Zoom. We will announce those dates and get the link set up well in advance of any of them happening. Teams will interact and ask questions on Google Groups. Like I mentioned before, there is an optional by invitation on-site component, but that's 48 hours of a competition that extends over many months. So it is, a lot of virtual interacting. And then in this next section here, Lamai, if you can advance. This should give you a pretty good idea what the competition is like too. As far as parts that make up the IndySCC, there's an initial setup and practice component. And so this is where teams will attend webinars, get their Jetstream 2 VM set up, hopefully ask lots of questions and complete exercises to give them that hands-on experience prior to the 48-hour competition. There's a benchmark component. As I said before, it happens prior to that 48-hour competition and the conference in October time. And whoever gets the highest score on the selected set of benchmarks gets the honor of some recognition there. There's a team poster. Just as with the SCC, teams are asked to put together a poster that talks all about their team, why they're successful, their strategies for assembling their team. And then finally, there's the competition. And so that's where you run your 2 known applications and then a third mystery application that won't be announced until the very start of the competition. And then we just direct you to the IndySCC page where we'll be announcing the 2 known applications, hopefully shortly. And then just a general pointer to the IndySCC website for additional updates. I think you can go on to the next slide.
So what's new for this year for the SCC? And for this slide, I was mostly focused on differences from this year and last year. We have new power rules. So many of you who might have taken a look at the rules that are on the website already might have noticed this. The power cap has been raised to 10 kilowatts. We have removed the per node power cap, so that we last year I believe it was 2,000 watts per node. We are lifting that. We're not going to provide the extra budget for networking. We're just expecting everything to fit within that 10,000 watt envelope. We've also lifted the 3 node minimum. So we would love to see, though, of course, what you guys can come up with that's within this description and these rules. If you have anything that isn't fitting within these rules, please reach out to us. But you have an interest to bring it, please reach out to us and we can discuss as a committee how far or how close that comes to the rules. And we are always interested in seeing interesting architectures come to the competition. As I touched on earlier, there was going to be no benchmark interviews or mystery benchmark. There was a mystery benchmark last year. There were some mixed feedback there during the feedback session on Thursday. We thought we would continue to do the same number or the same number of benchmarks, but announce them ahead of time. We'll also remove the benchmark interviews as it was a little bit tough for the benchmarking experts to do across the competitions and in the SCC. So we'll be focusing mainly on application interviews as we did in the past. There will be no top HPL award this year, and we'll have a good reason for why that is when in the coming slides. Last year, we enjoyed larger booths, but the booths are smaller than last year. We're going to go back to a 10-foot by 10-foot booth. I believe last year was 10 by 15. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's going to be a new mandatory event that, again, hopefully brings the students closer to the competition and closer to the rest of the student programming with a guided interest group that we hope will be a tour for the students in the guided interest group at the SCC booths and for them to get to know you and the competition better. Okay. We'll go on to what's new this year for the IndySCC.
All right, lots of exciting changes, I think. So I'll just kind of walk through each of these. The first one I wanted to mention is that there will be team liaisons for both in-person and virtual teams. And so I'm hoping this will streamline some of the communication, make sure that teams get answers to their questions in a timely fashion. And so this will be the primary means by which IndySCC teams interact with the committee. Each team will have their own Jetstream 2 allocation. And with this comes some, I think, big improvements for what what interacting with the hardware looks like. And so teams will have access to the user portal called Exosphere, and this allows them to self-manage their VMs. They will be able to select from a variety of images and operating systems. They'll be able to manage their own snapshot, easily monitor their usage, customize their storage. And so, collectively, I think this gives teams more control and more customization over what their hardware looks like. There will be a defined official setup period prior to the application webinars. And so teams will have at least a couple of weeks to kind of familiarize themselves with Jetstream 2 VMs and get things, SPAC, Conda, all set up, installed, and installed on their VMs. There will be more opportunities to interact with application experts. And so that will take place through office hours and review sessions. And so this will be hopefully a chance to get lots of feedback on your strategy and how you're running your applications. I think probably the largest change, the one that Lamai alluded to when she was talking about the SCC, is that there's a new award. And so the IndySCC winner will be announced on stage during the award ceremony. And so I think this adds a level of excitement to the IndySCC that we haven't seen in previous years. And then there will be travel funding for up to 3 IndySCC teams, including an international team. And so we encourage as many international teams as possible to apply. And we're really hoping to bring one international team on site. And then the last change I'll mention is that there will be hard-sided booths this year. And so last year was the first time that there was an on-site component. And so just getting the teams there was kind of our big win. There were pipe and drape booths this year. The hard-sided booths, I hope, will add a level of refinement to the IndySCC and, have it looking nice and spiffy.
Great. So now that we know what all goes into the SCC and IndySCC and what all is new this year, how are you going to prepare for the SCC and IndySCC? So before the event, you'll have to make sure that you have a cluster to bring. So form partnerships with institutions and vendors, present the rules to the institutions and vendors, see what you can negotiate and manage to bring to the competition. Then with them, design a cluster, and with your team and your institution support, practice building and supporting and running the applications. The SCC is very much you get out what you put into it. And so we encourage all the teams to practice, do a lot of legwork ahead of time, and really look into how practice building and running the applications. The successful teams that we've seen have done this and practice months ahead of coming to the conference in November. So plan the logistics of getting to the competition. There's a group of 6 people. That's quite that's a large group of people that you'll have to think about. How do I get them to the competition? How do we organize around who's going to be in the booth, who's getting sleep, who's doing what in terms of tasks for completing the 48-hour competition. So think about how you're going to get there, who's going to be doing things, and how you're going to organize yourselves. In terms of getting to when you get to the competition and what we will be providing, keep in mind that SCC will be providing conference registrations, so technical program registrations for your 6 team members and your advisor, and we'll be providing single occupancy hotel rooms. So these hotel rooms can't be shared with other attendees or people who you might know who are also attending the conference. These are for only team members and only for each person in the team. What we don't provide are other expenses related to travel. For example, the actual travel fare. Shipping will be providing some snacks and drinks, refreshments in the booth, but by no means will this be full meals or anything like that. This will be things like um, overnight food like frozen burritos and chips and snacks like that that should just tide you over. But we encourage that you work with your institution and vendor partners to cover things like per diem meals, again, your travel, airfare, and shipping for your cluster costs. And for the IndySCC.
Yeah, so as with the SCC, you get out what you put in. We definitely encourage teams to set aside time to practice with your team. So logistically, time that all of the team is available to work together on the applications, um, and getting their Jetstream to VM set up. We ask that teams plan to attend the webinars, office hours, review sessions, any opportunity to interact with the application experts. Um, please take advantage of that. And we'll announce those dates around the time that the teams are announced. We ask you to leave plenty of time for troubleshooting issues. And so, as with anything else, leaving it to the last minute isn't going to give you the most successful outcome. And so, work that cushion into your strategy for the competition. And as with the SCC, we encourage teams to plan logistics of getting to the competition. And so, that might include making sure that visas are applied for with lots of time. Um, you figure out how your team will fund your trip if you're not a fully funded team. So just in general, plan to the greatest extent possible if you plan to be on site. You can advance.
Great. So we've gone over what the competitions are, what the parts of the competition are, what all the components of the competitions, and what you can expect that's different this year from the last year. So how you can prepare for it. So what are our tips for applying to the SCC and IndySCC? How can you make a strong application that gets you to these competitions? So it might be silly, but be sure to address all of the questions. Make sure that you're hitting some of the points that we're asking you to address and target in each of the questions in the application. Within the application, think about which competition you are interested in participating in, either the SCC or IndySCC. Within the application, you can select either or, and if you select to participate or apply rather for the SCC, SCC applicants have the option to indicate that they're interested in participating in the IndySCC as well. Then you're also going to describe the strength of your team. So how will you guys going to work together as a team to win? What are your strengths? What makes you sets you aside as a team that will win? What are your strengths, and what is going to bring you to the competition and make sure that you are successful there? You're also going to have to talk about your strength of diversity within the team. And this is not academic diversity, but diversity in other areas, such as are you an underrepresented group, or what diversity means to your home region and institution. So diversity can mean different things to where you are located and what kinds of lived experiences are around you. So diverse voices and having a good amount of representation matters in terms of broadening participation in the students program and making sure that we have a strong workforce moving forward. So we'd like to know, what does diversity mean to you, to your institute, and to your culture, and how does that make you stronger as a team? And what were the efforts you took to recruit your diverse team? So this could cross many different things: socioeconomic status, for example, religion, and other facets and lived experiences. You'll also have to talk about your strength of hardware and software strategies. This would be for the student cluster competition for the SCC only. So you will detail the hardware you'll be bringing and why you'll be successful with that hardware, and the software strategies that you're going to employ, whether that be you're going to use Packer Easy Build or other sort of package managers, and why that's going to make you successful. Go beyond the technical specs. Let us know what strategies you are going to apply to make you win, what kind of preparations you are going to make, and what justifies the choices that you have made, and how that's going to make your team and your approach to the competition even stronger. You'll also have to talk about the strength of your vendor-institute relationship. So here describe, like, how are you going to be supported either by the vendor or institute that you're coming, that you are so institute that you're coming from and the vendor that you are working with. Are they going to be covering not only infrastructure costs for the SCC, but are they also going to be covering travel costs, your meals? Are they going to be providing support for education or coursework, giving you access to hardware to play with ahead of time? So these are things to consider in answering this section. You'll also have to talk about how well prepared is your team? What is your plan to prepare, be it meetings or courses that you're going to be taking? What are your strategies for preparing, and how is that going to make you successful? We're not looking here for we're going to be attending this list of courses and that is what's going to make us successful. This has to be something that's a little bit more than that. What are your strategies outside of just taking courses, that is building the team and is building strategies and making sure that when you come to St. Louis in November, that you are ready to roll in terms of building your clusters, running the benchmarks and the applications. You'll also have to describe your team educational goals. And so here, be as specific as possible. Many, teams are going to have some very similar educational goals, but think about what will make you distinguish yourselves from the other teams. How do those educational goals contribute to your future goals in terms of professional development, and what you also want to get out of this conference socially, or in terms of networking with professionals, and what you want to learn in terms of your goals for education, but also for your workforce development. And with that, we want to talk about important dates that you guys want to look out for. So right now, applications are open. They opened in March 1st, and they'll be closing in May 16th. So we still have a good amount of weeks before those close. And then on June 16th, we'll send out notifications of acceptance or otherwise to all the teams. So finally, we're reaching the end of the webinar. If you need more information, please take a look at the website, the IndySCC and SCC website and rules. They're all there, and we'll be posting, again, webinar schedule. We'll be posting recordings of the webinars and more information about the competitions there. So please take a look for the most updated information. Finally, if you have any questions for us, you can send us an email with your inquiries, which I know many of you have already done, to the following emails. We'll have the student cluster competition at info.supercomputing.org for the student cluster competition questions. And for the IndySCC, you can drop Layla and Dan a line at IndySCC@info.supercomputing.org. And with that, we'll open for questions, but we can kick off some questions as well. A couple of the questions that I think, well, one question Layla and I have definitely seen in the last few months from various teams, either asking us in person or through one of these email lines, is how can I write a successful application to the SCC and IndySCC, and how can I prepare a good team for the IndySCC and SCC? And I think that Layla and I have touched on it a little bit. It's really preparation. I think that having strong vendor relationships and institution relationships definitely helps kind of make sure you have some kind of format or structure around preparing for it, but definitely prepare early and prepare often. You definitely get what you put in there, and successful teams usually will be preparing ahead of time, many months in advance, and working on this many months before coming to the competition in November. Scott has a question. Go ahead.
So the 10 kilowatt jump for the SCC is a pretty big increase in power. Will you be allowing other types of cooling beyond just traditional air cooling that's been allowed in the past?
I will have to I will have to find out from our infrastructure people if that's possible. And I'll get back to you, but right now I have not considered that question. Good question. I'll let you know about that. But right now I would say it's going to be air cooling, but yes, without knowing what the plumbing situation is there, I guess. Other questions?
Well, I have a question that might be helpful for SEC teams. Um, how do you get vendor partners? What's your recommendation for that?
That is a great question. And I think a related question that SEC gets quite often too is where can we find hardware? Does a student cluster competition offer any hardware or list of vendor partners, something to help certain teams find hardware, since it can be a challenging thing for the cluster competition. My first answer is there is a incredible competition that happens at the same time as the student cluster competition that does not require you to have a vendor partner or bring infrastructure, a cluster that you have to build to the competition. And that's called the IndySCC. That is the whole spirit. And in my mind, the goals of the IndySCC is to have an avenue for teams who might not be able to secure those vendor relationships or that kind of or that infrastructure prior to the competition. That is the spirit of the IndySCC, and our hope is that just because you aren't able to do that, that you have another competition and your institute doesn't lose momentum in terms of participation in the SCC. Yes, it's a question that comes up a lot, and I think internally as part of the student programming, there's been ideas there about what we can do better in that way. But I think that we have addressed that in many ways by offering the IndySCC, and it's just as an exciting competition. I think that many of the participants in the past, students or otherwise, have gotten a lot out of it. And I would encourage you guys to take a look at that, especially with the awards now. Your team will also get recognized as part of the conference in IndySCC. So I would say go check the IndySCC out. And if you are having issues there, keep in mind that competition is there. And if not, you can also reach out to us at Student Cluster Competition at info.supercomputing.org. Other questions?
I have a comment on the alternate cooling question, which is if you have alternate cooling that you're looking at, contact us about it.
Yes, that's a great point, Steve, and thanks for mentioning that. Well, thank you very much. I think that's it. We'll end the webinar here, and we'll make sure that this gets posted on the website. Thank you all for dropping in.
Thanks, everyone.